Welcome into the Women's Basketball Podcast, your one-stop shop for all things WNBA postseason edition, Unrivaled. College hoops, man, we've got some saucy news on the recruiting trail and so much more. Mia O'Brien sitting in with my friend Rebecca Kopelman, who is in for SB Nation's Mitchell Northam, still on paternity leave. And Rebecca, you sat here in that very seat 1 week ago, and you said, I can't guarantee that it will be the Indiana Fever advancing to the WNBA championship round. But what I can tell you, lock it, this series is going to 5 games. And folks, we got game 5 coming up in Las Vegas on Tuesday night. We're recording this podcast on Monday, September 29th. We'll have your primer on the final game of that semifinal. We'll recap the chaos in the other semi between the Minnesota Lynx and the Phoenix Mercury. But first things first, Rebecca, how are we feeling as we look towards the championship round of the 2025 WNBA season?
I will say I'm a little fearful for Tuesday night. I did also say it would be 5 games and that I did not think the Fever would win. I believe, but I also just approach with caution. I also sat here and said that I thought the Lynx were going to take it, and they had a little complicated road, and they did not take it. And that ended rather quickly, and we still have, despite there only being 1 game 5, a very late tip on Tuesday night. So I will have to strategically figure that one out.
For those of you who don't know, Rebecca Kopelman is not just one of my best friends, and that's not the reason we invite her in each and every week that Mitch is not here on the Women's Basketball Podcast. She is also the chief meteorologist at Iowa's News Now, and sometimes a sports reporter, especially in the world of women's sports. So Rebecca does the morning meteorology. So she will have to be up at, what time is your alarm going off in the morning?
2:15.
2:15. So that 8:30 p.m. Central Time tip, it's going to be a little rough Wednesday morning, but laying it all on the line in the name of the W. Let's dive into that series first before we get to our requiem for the Minnesota Lynx and look ahead to the Phoenix Mercury's bid for another WNBA crown. This series is tied at 2 games apiece. To recap, of course, that comes after the Fever shocked the world with a demolition derby in Las Vegas in game 1, 89-73. Then in game 2, the Aces bounced back in, just the fashion you would expect, as they absolutely annihilated the Fever by 22 points in game 2. The series shifted back to Indianapolis. We had the Jackie Young game. She drops 25 as the Aces take game 3. And then game 4, the most recent game that forced that pivotal series deciding game 5, the Indiana Fever with a 90-83 victory on Sunday. Asia Wilson scored 31 points, but Aaliyah Boston wins the battle of South Carolina Bigs. And of course, Rebecca, I'm texting you during game 3 on Friday, in which Asia Wilson was held to just 1 basket in the first half. She only had 6 made field goals in that game. And I know we were saying it to each other. Kevin and I are saying it on the couch. If you can hold Asia Wilson to a single-digit scoring performance, you need to win that game. And obviously, they didn't hold her to single digits when all was said and done, but they held her to single field goals. And you would still say you need to win that game. And instead, it's a game 2 nights later in which they allow her to score 30 plus that the Indiana Fever are able to pull out a victory. Why are we headed to a game 5 of this semifinal series?
I will say one of the things that was being mentioned on the broadcast too was the fact that Aaliyah was being so aggressive in the post. And that was one thing where it was just odd watching her be that ball distributor. And I know just with your point guard, the situation, you're having to use her in different ways, but because she was getting to the post, she was really, getting in the paint, and that's where she does her best work offensively. The footwork is just crisp, and she was getting it done. And someone else that I mentioned last week that needed to be on her game for the Fever was Odyssey Sims. Mm-hmm. And she was. Initially, she wasn't. And she had a couple of messy turnovers in the beginning of game 4, but pulled her out. Shea Petty came in off the bench and was rocking it. Really aggressive steals and just at times, aside from her one air ball that she knew was a miss, really doing great on offense. And then Odyssey came back in and was just on it, and she had to be, because that just worked and everything was clicking. I think Natasha was getting really good. Just looks at the basket at the rim. And then you also had Lexi Hull, like literally putting her body once again on the line, and the steals, the threes, the everything. It was just all coming together for them, despite Asia Wilson dropping 31. And then I think the other thing that helped was that Melissa Smith, who had a great game 3, also got into foul trouble and was not as efficient in game 4.
And what's interesting, Rebecca, to your point, is the threes were timely on Sunday. They did not come in as efficient a rate as they did on Friday night in game 3. The Fever finished just 4 of 15 from beyond the arc, but ultimately they were powered by those 3 scorers who finished in double figures, in Odyssey Sims with 18 points, Aaliyah Boston with 24, and who else but the MVP candidate, not the MVP, relax, folks, Kelsey Mitchell with 25 points. And of course, Aaliyah Boston had a double-double of 24 and 14. As for the Aces, look, it's the same old story. And Asia Wilson's been very open about it. She cannot do everything for this team. She needs to have not just a Robin and Jackie Young, but she needs to have a third or a fourth piece. And on those nights where you see Chelsea Gray and Jewel Lloyd just inefficient on offense, and not to say that they were on Sunday, as Chelsea Gray did finish with 12 points in this game. Jewel, 6 points, which was more than she had in game 1. So we'll credit her for that. And so I think that, again, it comes down to Asia Wilson is the MVP, but she needs help around her. Some notes from the Fever side of things. I know we're very excited about this fun fact, Rebecca, that the Fever this postseason are 4-0 when Stephanie White wears the red leather jacket. Of course, they also had the Caitlin Clark Air Force One streak going on. Whenever she wore the black Air Force Ones, they also won. So I hope we see both in Las Vegas on Tuesday night for the Fever's sake. I also think that this next fact bears meriting, because you sent it to me, I think, on every single form of social media after my fellow ESPN colleague, Alexa Philippou, tweeted out that this is the Fever's 4th win as an underdog this postseason. That is the most by any team since the 2021 Chicago Sky, who, of course, went on to win the championship. Destiny, what say you, Rebecca?
I was curious who the Sky beat in 2021, and it's none other than the Phoenix Mercury. So you also had, I'm just saying that, maybe there's a little bit of destiny going on there. I don't think that there's it's going to be so hard. The toss up obviously is the fact that you're back in Vegas. They did take a game from them in Vegas. It's not impossible. It's something they can do. But the one stat ESPN also had was that the team that wins game 3 tends to go in with more momentum, and then does have a tendency. I think it just had 63%
the one that wins game
of the time
3. That's interesting.
Wins the series.
Interesting. I wonder what that stat is. We're gonna have to look that up, because you would think if you win game 4, you've got momentum because you've staved off elimination, which this Fever team did, of course, against the Atlanta Dream in an elimination game, and then did again on Sunday. That's interesting.
I can't remember if it was the whole series or if it was a tendency to win game 4 with 63%, but it had that. It's not a huge correlation, but it's one. But yeah, you would think that, if you're forcing it, but then you're going back to that home court advantage on the other side. So it's going to be tough. It's not impossible, but I hope it's close. And I know you described game 4 as like a heavyweight match. I mean, it basically was this just slugging back and forth, and there was good defense and offense on both sides. You did have some struggle busts on some sides of it too, on both the Aces and the Fever, but it just was definitely a battle, and hopefully it stays competitive in game 5. That's all I ask.
Tell me this, Rebecca. Would we see a different perspective nationally, not just on the WNBA postseason, but on the Indiana Fever and this, the poor little old Fever, they've used 19 players this season? Would we be viewing them through that same lens if Caitlin Clark was healthy, let alone if Sophie Cunningham was healthy, if Sid Colson was healthy? The list goes on.
I think there would be a bigger expectation of them to be, in the final stage. It's almost like this, anything can happen in the postseason. Obviously, everyone was expecting the Lynx to be there. Everyone was expecting, they got last year, and they got robbed, and this is going to be their year. But these things happen. And I think that should be regardless of Nafisa's injury even. But just the fact that if Caitlyn was there, this would be like, well, duh, you guys should be doing it. And I think the sentiment would probably be different. It would probably be a lot different, because I think no one was really expecting this, given the injuries and then having to do this, relationship building in the middle of the season with all of these new players.
Yeah, and I think that you might even see, to your point about the Lynx, who we'll get to here in just a second, would the Fever be playing tighter because of those expectations, and because they feel like they're playing with house money right now, and because they've got the bench mob and they've got this free spirit? But you said it last week on the show, and it does bear repeating. You don't think that the Fever make it to a game 5 in the semifinals if they don't have Coach Caitlin Clark on the sideline, not only helping Stephanie White and the coaching staff draw up plays, but just what those gals that are on the bench, behind the bench, since of course they need 2 benches because they've got so many injured players on their roster. If those girls weren't there, if those women weren't there contributing to the greater picture.
I think that still, holds merit. I think, for one, you obviously wouldn't still have some of these pieces that you have. Does Kelsey Mitchell stay in Indiana if Caitlin Clark's not there? Do you get Natasha Howard? Do you get Sophie Cunningham? And all of them, got them to this point. And then, I think there is a lot of, there's a lot of voices around the Fever, and unfortunately, there are some bad actors and fans that clearly do not know the history of this league, do not represent the league well, do not represent the Fever well, who have created this kind of villain sense around it, for sure.
But you think, to be clear, you think it's the bad actors that have created this villain. You don't think that if Caitlyn was fully healthy, let's say Caitlyn is pushing Asia Wilson in the MVP race in year 2, and she never misses any time, I think at that point in time, it's a question of, does Caitlyn say the league's out to get us, or does she project this idea of this is our destiny, or we are the villains, we're the new bad kid on the block? How do you think the Fever would be perceived at that point?
I mean, I don't think Caitlyn would push any sort of narrative in terms of the villainizing. I think Sophie Cunningham still, she's doing it all day, that's Sophie's prerogative, I suppose.
Sophie's more the villain than Caitlyn is.
I think so. But I think Caitlyn kind of has, like, she's being villainized by these, fair weather fans and these people who have come in and they want to use her and put her on a pedestal. But I do think that, the fans kind of create that sentiment of like, oh, the league wouldn't, the league doesn't want us here, like blah, blah, blah. We weren't supposed to be here. And, would it be that shocking that Caitlin Clark could get this team elevated to this level? No, I think I do agree. I think she is still taking it from the bench, and she is giving the support. Sid Colson also, she wouldn't be there despite her injury now. She wouldn't be there if it weren't for Caitlyn, and I believe at least partially. But she also is being a huge contributor, and I believe that she's probably helping in terms of playing against her former team.
Yeah.
And having a little bit of inside baseball knowledge there that is helping for sure. So I think there are those pieces that do relate back to Caitlyn that are ultimately helping them despite her not being able to be on the floor.
The league is sick. The league doesn't want them there, or so we've been told. We were quite literally told by Cheryl Reeve on Friday night that the league needs to reevaluate itself because first they tried to steal her championship. Verbatim said the word steal at the 2024 championship Game 5 post-game presser. And then after Game 3 of the semifinal series against the Phoenix Mercury, the head coach of the Minnesota Lynx saying that there needs to be change at the top. That was not necessarily directed at Kathy Engelbert, the commissioner. At least I did not interpret it that way, Rebecca. But what I did interpret it as is she wants a clean sweep, the house to be cleaned when it comes to the senior vice president of officiating, when it comes to the W Refs Association. And this is the most tenured, your longest standing head coach. I mean, you could make the argument, statistically speaking, with the departure of Sandy Brondello from the New York Liberty last week, You could take all of the other coaches in the W, take their years of service and combine them, and you still don't equal the amount of years that Cheryl Reeve has coached the Minnesota Lynx, let alone the fact that she has also coached Team USA. And so, in case you missed it, Cheryl crashed out. That's how Rebecca described it to me. I fell asleep Friday. Yes, Friday I did fall asleep on the couch, and I woke up and Cheryl had been ejected. Napheesa Collier is like done for, and I'm like, what the heck happened? So start from the top, Rebecca. How did we get here after a Minnesota Lynx team, the number one seed in the postseason, the number one team basically from wire to wire of the 2025 regular season, up 1-0, drops game 2 after allowing the Mercury to creep back in, a last-second 3 by Westbeld, forces overtime, the Mercury prevail, and now all of a sudden, chaos in game 3 and a game 4 that was all but spoken for before they even tipped it off.
I'll say that, Phoenix was one team that I didn't get a chance to watch a lot, but I would see highlights and I'd see some scores, and I know Ka, I know AT. Eventually they add Dewana, but then they were kind of like this rookie crew that were, just somehow making it. And you had Satu, who I wanted to come to the Fever, but that's okay. But, they just were a team that scared me a little bit for the Fever to play. Their arena definitely has a lot of home court advantage, and I knew it was going to be tough for Minnesota, but I thought they were going to squeak one out. But they had some issues that you don't typically see with that number one seed, that championship caliber team, and they have so many of those pieces without injury, save Dejanay Carrington and save what just happened to Napheesa, that they should, on paper they should do it. You had, Jess Shepard doing incredible things. You had Natisha Heidemann coming off the bench and doing incredible stuff. You could pluck and pick and put these pieces there, and then they're dropping big leads and they're not able to finish off these games. And it just seemed like, obviously the mounting frustration with the physicality was becoming a problem. I don't know if that was a mental game that was going on too, but then you also had a starter like Bridget Carlton, who, you talk about like a playoff, they talk about in the MNBA, it's like, it's playoff Ant or whatever, it's playoff whoever. And they, it's a different person, like playoff Lexi definitely is happening. But then it was like playoff Bridget Carlton was asleep. Like she scored, I think collectively like 12 points in the series. That just shouldn't be happening. And then Natisha Heidemann had a crappy game, and she had been incredible off the bench. And in the previous game, she was in double digits. I can't remember if it was 13 or 18, but you just had these pieces of the puzzle that weren't all coming together for some reason. And obviously not having Cheryl there could have made a big difference in that last game. And Fee makes a big difference. And I don't know if like that last kind of push when you get Fee back, and then you have Dejanay, who really, she was doing incredible stuff for them, an incredible defender, and missing that presence too could be significant. But I just think like, you got Kayla McBride dropping 31, 35 points, whatever she did. And then you can't finish a game like that. It's tough, just like what happened with Asia in game 4. But unfortunately, that was the last lifeline for the Lynx.
Yes. Let's start with the game you just discussed, which of course was the 86-81 victory on Sunday for the Phoenix Mercury that punched their ticket to the championship round. No Napheesa Collier, no problem for Kayla McBride, who finished with 31 points, Courtney Williams with 20, Jess Shepard with 14. But don't bury the lead, Rebecca. They were without their head coach after their head coach not only went off on a tirade in which she called it effing malpractice for the way that the game has been officiated. She revealed that not only, in her own words, did Napheesa Collier, the runner-up for MVP, probably break a bone in her foot. Spoiler alert, she didn't break the bone in her foot. But that she also had her shoulder pulled out consistently. I don't know if her shoulder was actually pulled out. The point is, Rebecca, I look at that performance on Sunday, and to your point, they were in this game. There's a chance they win this game even without Napheesa Collier because, by the way, they won a lot of games in a 2.5-week stretch from July to August when she was unavailable. And so that's why I look at this series, and ultimately, because we love chicken or the egg questions, it always comes back to that. Was this series more so that the Lynx blew it as opposed to the Mercury earned it? Because I agree with you. I think that Phoenix is clicking at the right time, and that's what the best teams do. But I also feel that just because you were without Napheesa, just because you were without Cheryl Reeve, does not mean that you should just write that one off as, well, we're going to lose this one too. And I felt like Minnesota lost that game before they even tipped it off.
Yeah, I think that, like I was saying, maybe there was a bit of that mental game going on there. And the issue with the Lynx too is that game too should not have been lost. That should not have gone into overtime. They blew like a 14, 16 point lead and allowed the Mercury to come back in their home arena that they had such incredible home court advantage in all season long. I think, losing that momentum there, and then all the issues that happened, and no doubt Phoenix is a physical team, and there have been several issues and texts and things that have happened, and the Fever suffered some injuries that during those games. Not to say that that's, that can happen. It happened in multiple games. It's not necessarily that, but there's definitely a lot of physicality that's going on. And I think, to Cheryl Reeve's point, we might get fined. Everybody's getting fined now. Becky and Stephanie got fined for agreeing with Cheryl, by the way.
They get fined $200 like Caitlin Clark, though. That's what I know they didn't.
We'll have to ask.
Yeah.
Text Alexa, ask her. But I think that the issue overall is with the officiating is just the lack of consistency.
Yep.
And the fact that then it does turn into this very physical game, and things mount to the point of the steal and Nafisa's injury that did occur when Fee goes down. And I frequently yell at the TV, and I don't understand what a foul is frequently.
Well, it's the same. So here's my thing, though. It's the same as football. Like, we don't know what a catch is. Like that. I respect Cheryl Reeve feeling like the game has gotten to a point where, because there's such inconsistencies in how it's officiated and it's become too physical, and we're rewarding players with being physical. Like, I understand that, but it is happening in all sports right now. In terms of, if you don't have full-time officials, and even if you do in the case of the National Football League, you are not getting the same result week to week, staff to staff. I mean, it's one of those things where there's not like, what are you supposed to do? Like, it's sports, it's human error, it's part of the game.
Yeah, I think that the probably issue that she's seeing, and that I think a lot of people are seeing, and I would agree too. I just think that that when there's so much inconsistency amongst these crews and the way things are going, that players start to push a little bit, and then that physicality becomes almost okay. And it was like the same issue that mounted in Connecticut, where the fight ultimately happened with Sophie, and those same things where if certain calls aren't made properly, and then it just starts to escalate things in a mind game. And so I just think, obviously, because there are people arguing about like, oh, you don't want it to be like the MNBA where like there's no touching and blah, blah, blah. Like, obviously there's going to be some physicality, but there should be some level of consistency. There's always going to be human error. It's not all going to get caught, but it seems like there's a little too much extracurricular sometimes that it's going on.
I mean, I just feel like chestnut checkers. A lot of this is Cheryl trying to get full-time refs and try to get them full-time jobs inadvertently by bashing them, which I'm here for. But then at least you really have no excuse for inconsistencies. You can't say this is a part-time job for people if it's their full-time job. So that's number one. Number two, not from Alexa Philippou. This is from Sabrina Merchant of The Athletic. Some breaking news here in the last hour. Cheryl Reeve was also, in addition to being suspended for Game 4 of the WNBA semifinals, fined $15,000 in addition to that suspension.
$15,000?
$15,000 compared to the $200 that, of course, Caitlin Clark was fined. But wait for it. Two of her assistants fined $500 each. I just fined $500, fined $200. Like, I mean, I'm not saying that I've got money growing on a tree back out the side, but like, I mean, like, what do we do? Like, what are we doing? Like, at least make it $1,000.
Deep.
No, for Cheryl, it's a lot, but the $500 for her assistants, I'm just like, okay, is that tax deductible, or like, what are we doing?
Well, that's the other argument too. If you slapped like a big fine like that on her, is that not enough when you're talking like postseason on the line to yank the head coach? I mean, that's kind of extreme.
Right. Well, so that's where like Ben Pickman of The Athletic said this, like he wonders, and this was on their podcast, which of course we all listen to as well, no off season. Like he said, he wonders if because Cheryl was not fined after her comments after the Liberty defeated the Lynx in Game 5 of the championship series last year, he wonders if because the league never fined or suspended her for we got cheated out of a title, they stole our title. After that comment, he wonders if this is just a culmination of they were just like, we're just going to slap her with the suspension and the fine. Like, we're not messing around with this anymore, Cheryl. You're also not the coach of Team USA this summer like you were last summer. So we're just going to keep some positive PR not going, and we're just going to go from here. So Cheryl Reeve has a crash out of the year nominee for throughout the wide world of sports. It's going to be up there. I love the tweet from Billy. For those of you who also follow the NFL, you know Billy M on Twitter. He does a great job of clipping various, not just football, but also or in the NFL, but college football, basketball, college. He's always clipping some clips. He also is a big WNBA fan, and he tweeted it out, Rebecca, and I couldn't agree more. If that had been Dan Hurley, the head men's coach at UConn, like there would have been think pieces written about this. I'm sure that there were some written about it, but ultimately, I think that my concern, and this is why I said it's great we have you, a Minnesota sports fan, on this podcast this week, like, I don't know when they're finally going to get over the hump, this Nafisa Collier-led iteration of the Lynx. Like, Cheryl Reeve, yes, has been there forever and has seen championship teams. But I don't know, like, what it's going to take. Because last year, yes, you were cheated. It was stolen from you. Okay, like, you were an upstart team in the second half of the season and got hot at the right time. And certainly were a bad matchup for the Liberty at times. But you were going against a super team. And now this year, like, again, my concern is the mental fortitude of, yes, you're without your coach. Yes, you're without your best player, but you won multiple games without your best player earlier in the year. Why would you fold? And they didn't fold, to be clear, because they only lost by 5. But like, it's that for me is just a little bit concerning. 30,000 foot view.
I honestly thought that the Lynx were going to take that game anyway, regardless if Fee wasn't there or even without Cheryl. I do think that it's kind of coming around to that mental game, perhaps at the end, that just something was not working, and then Bridget Carlton needed to sit on the bench was my other point. But regardless, start somebody else. I don't know. Put Klindikova in there, but like,
yeah, she was just minutes. We talked about it last week.
Yeah, it was not working for BC, and she usually, I mean, she was fantastic last year in the finals and was a huge push for them. But I do think that mental game and just kind of getting down, and the Fever and the Aces could have done the same thing. I mean, I was the separation in the free throw differential that was going on between the two, and Becky made some comments about that, which is totally fair on her part, and it was hard to say what was kind of causing that. It seemed like they started to have a tighter whistle toward the end, and it was the same crew that Cheryl just had beef with, so who knows. But then there was quite the difference. Of course, the Fever in game 3 had also a lot more free throws and then left a lot at the line, so you could in that respect too, with the Aces, gotten into a hole about that and thought, oh, well, they're just going to be physical and we should just let this one go. But they're not doing that either. I
mean, the Aces got beat by 50 by the Lynx, and we all wrote them off, and they didn't fold. The Fever, for all their flaws of being villains of the WNBA, even if they won't admit it, the Fever have used 19 different players this year. They have not folded, but the Minnesota Lynx folded the moment that their coach crashed out and their best player was unavailable for one game, assuming that she was done forever and she doesn't even have a broken bone in her foot. Like that's my thing. And I hope Fee's okay. I do hope we see her in Unrivaled. I know that's still being determined, but like that is my biggest takeaway and my requiem for the Minnesota Lynx in 2025. When the going actually got tough, you folded. And now I have concerns for you long-term.
Yeah, I agree. And it will be interesting in multiple respects with how the, next series of free agency and all these things go, and they will get a top pick because they have Chicago's. But I would, like I said early on in this conversation too, I think on paper that team should have beaten Phoenix, but we haven't totally gotten to the Phoenix side of things. I will say that I wrote it down. I said the big 3 is alive, because for real, I mean, I texted you because I caught the beginning of the game last night and then it was on too late for me. But it was like 12-1. Alyssa Thomas had 1 free throw, and you're 4 minutes into the game. They had scored 1 point, Phoenix. And by the end of it, I woke up in the middle of the night and I looked at the score, and my husband, who is a Minnesota fan, I said, they lost. And he said, yeah. And I said, oh, I was not expecting that. And that speaks,
you know what? And that speaks to the mental fortitude of this Mercury team, which I buried that lead. It's a good, as much as I want to say the Lynx blew this series, Rebecca, the Mercury fought their way back in game 2 to force overtime, to swing momentum, which is real. In the words of my friend Jordan Rodriguez of The Athletic, it is real. And it was clearly palpable because the Lynx clearly felt the heat in game 3. And that's part of why they crashed out.
Yeah, and I think that, you do have some, prolific scoring with Satu and with Ka, and, Ka wasn't putting up like insane numbers. It was 13 points. Satu had 21. Alyssa Thomas had 23. I also wrote down that Dewana did want to win, and she had 13 points and 6 rebounds. She was a plus 17 on the floor, which was a game high. So that is certainly speaking to, and she's been getting a lot of praise from the team online and such. I think, she has the most, I think, experience probably in the league currently with playoffs. She has
outside of Tina Charles, it's her and Tina, I think.
So there you go. I mean, unfortunately, Tina had the short end of the stick this year, but she knows when to turn it on when she can. That's why I was excited for her to be on the Fever. But she has been impactful at times. But you had those people stepping up and being able to do it. And even though it was a close game, Phoenix was the one that finished out.
So what do we think? Are we going to see the Don't Wanna revenge game or revenge series against Indiana Fever? I mean, to be clear, you can certainly look at DeWanna Bonner potentially having to face her former team in a championship series, but also her and Alyssa Thomas having to face their former head coach and Stephanie White if the Fever win on Tuesday night. Or is this once again the coronation of a dynasty if the Las Vegas Aces are to go up against the Phoenix Mercury, take them down, and in turn win their 3rd title in 4 years? What say you, Rebecca?
I mean, anything's possible, right? Anything can happen. There's still many outcomes at this point, and I think that the Mercury and the Aces both have the advantage of they got their injuries out of the way, and they're going in healthy to this postseason. I did notice that the Mercury weren't going to their bench quite as often. Lexi Held, who had been a really strong 3-point shooter for them, did not have as many minutes, and she also did have like a collapsed lung, like this poor lady. And then she came back and she's back at it, but she wasn't getting as many minutes. But they do have some depth on the bench. It just is with, I think, maybe that rookie experience is where it's biting them a little bit, outside of Akoa Makane, who's like amazing. And a few of those pieces that are able to still get in there. But I think that they are trying to stick to their vets who have that post-game experience. But I don't know. You
won't make a prediction? You won't say who it's going to be against the Mercury? Or?
I do. I mean, I maintain what I said previously. I think the Aces are gonna take it at home. I think the Aces are gonna take it at home.
I think the Aces are gonna win the whole thing, and I think they're gonna win it in like 4 or 5 games because it's best of 7 series in the championship.
It is best of 7. That's interesting. Who has
I think the Aces are gonna. What's that?
Who has a higher seed at that point between the Aces and the Mercury?
They'll be the 2. They're the 2.
Okay, so they'll have home court advantage initially. But you're close. You're in the desert. You're right by each other. You can get plenty of Mercury.
A lot of late night tips, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's
not
rude,
good for Rebecca's sleep schedule.
No, I don't know. I think that the one part of the Aces that I'm struggling with is who you mentioned too, was Jewel and Chelsea. They have to be on it. And Jewel Lloyd was doing a lot defensively, but offensively has been a struggle bus this whole season, unfortunately. But just even in the postseason, like, she didn't make a point in the game 3, and then she did something in game 4. But like, and then like, I don't know.
You bring up a great point though, like, because I've been saying for a month now the Aces are winning the title. Like, I've said that for a month. I said it on ESPN radio, and I'm not backing down from it. But to your point, it's hilarious because then I also critique them and I say you don't have anybody besides Asia Wilson and Jackie Young, Batman and Robin, and yet I'm still sticking to it. I think they're going to win it all.
Yeah.
Let's keep it moving because that is our WNBA playoff primer once again. That Rebecca is still just so torn. She doesn't know who she wants. Is it the Aces? Is it the Fever? The Mercury? Let's get to some quick hits of beef, shall we? Because there's still plenty of other storylines going around in the wide world of women's basketball. Let's stay with the Aces briefly, because once again, folks, The storyline, one of my favorite pieces of beef, and it's really just a personal beef with Asia Wilson and Bam Adebayo. I think their relationship is beautiful. I think they're a beautiful couple. I want them to sing it from the mountaintops, and they don't. I want to shout out Miss Holly Rowe, fellow ESPNer, who out here on the broadcast Friday night got approval from Asia because Bam was in the building to literally reference, because she did, correct me if I'm wrong, Rebecca, like she did say her boyfriend Bam is
She
here.
said boyfriend.
And she said, and Asia told me I could say that. So I wanted to shout out Holly, because that's the hard hitting journalism that we need in 2025. Finally,
Mia, are you just mad that like Asia or Bam won't like come out specifically and say something?
I want them
like
to say,
they have
I can't
done
wait for
everything but
they have an opportunity to take down Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift. Okay, that's a little extreme, but they're at least in the rival category if they choose to be so, and they just don't. And I'm like, dude, like your love is pure.
So could Marina and Sanaya could too if they wanted to.
Oh boy, that's not Marina.
Okay, sorry.
Yes, Marina. And at first, I thought you said Sonia. I was like, no. So
no,
please,
no.
Sonia's boyfriend out here getting some bad PI calls in the Cowboys Sunday Night Football tie with the Green Bay Packers. But that's a story for another time. That's just my personal beef. Had to make sure we gave Miss Holly a shout out because
of course,
just please say their names, say their love. I need to hear it. To some real beef, to some actual beef. The New York Liberty's ownership group met with reporters after the dismissal of Sandy Brondello, the second most tenured coach, and of course, a champion head coach after helping the Liberty win the 2024 league title. And some of the comments were interesting, Rebecca. What did you think of this idea of dismissing Sandy was reactive? It was not reactive, it was proactive. So proactive, not reactive. What say you?
So I was very surprised when I saw the news, and when I got a chance to kind of absorb it, it kind of reminded me of the conversation we had last week. We were talking about the tendency to lean on this big three, and were there concerns about certain things that were going on that were not allowing the Liberty to get to their full potential? There was some discussion about, Izzy Harrison not getting a lot of minutes, and there was someone else, I can't remember right now, but just kind of this idea that maybe there was just this, I don't know, there was something going on that wasn't allowing it to happen the way that they envisioned. Of course, the Liberty saw themselves getting further into the postseason than they did. But then the other thing was some things that were coming up. Justice Collins, who's on all the social medias and especially on TikTok, she had brought up that that Sandy had been dismissed from Seattle. And is there something that's going on behind the scenes that just isn't being brought to the forefront?
Well, how long? Wait. Let me do the math here. Because when did the Seattle stuff, this like behind the scenes of there's some issues going on behind closed doors, and Jewel Lloyd potentially with, that was part of why she wanted out. Because Sandy was in Seattle from, she was just there as a player. She wasn't there because she was with the Liberty from 22 to 25.
Was she as an assistant coach?
Yeah, no, and then that was the Liberty. No, she was never with the Storm. Hold on a second. Yeah, okay. I was gonna say. So she was with the Mercury from 14. I mean, she was the head coach of the Mercury from 14 to 21. Maybe it's that.
Maybe it was drama. Mercury.
Well, yes. Allegedly, speaking of villains, who we've already discussed on this pod, the alleged Sophie Cunningham situation with the previous owner and the previous president, GM, whatever his name was. Maybe that's what this is in reference to, which, hey, maybe that is a storyline. But again, I go to that comment of this was proactive, not reactive, because it's where the league is headed. Maybe it's because of the New York bias, but I saw this move and I felt like it was near identical to the New York Knicks firing Tom Thibodeau this offseason after he led them to their first Eastern Conference final since 1999. And while Jalen Brunson and Josh Hart and Karl Anthony Towns all went to battle and said, we love Tibbs, it makes you wonder, okay, well, was it the Dolans? The Dolans are an easy ownership group to blame. I don't know if the New York Liberty ownership group is quite as easy to blame / has a track record of mismanaging its upper management as well as its players and how they are compensated. So blaming the Dolans is easy. That's why this is a much more difficult pill to swallow and try to decipher exactly why the move was made.
Yeah. And so it just is definitely interesting after you literally take them to the championship. You can't
Right.
expect, to go back to championships. Cheryl Reeve's not going to get fired probably, given this drop out of the postseason. But it just seems odd when you're also at this point in this where you're dealing with a lot of new coaches coming in to the fold. Like, is that the direction that we're just heading in, that we're just taking out the old guard now essentially, or what? Or do you have an expansion team pick her up? Does Sandy Brondello go to Canada with Angel Reese? I don't know. But these are the questions. But I think that it was shocking. And there was like the Stewie after in the post game of the game they lost. Someone said something about Sandy, potentially contract not being renewed, and she said, "What the?" She was like, "Excuse me," and I think it came to a shock to a lot of them, and it just, I don't know that there's a real explanation, but it seemed like there was something that they were expecting more out of. And was this going to happen regardless? I don't know. But yeah.
We do have some intel from our favorite insider, co-host of this podcast, Mitchell Northam, who is on paternity leave. But don't worry, folks. He is still out here working those phones. After the move was made to relieve Sandy of her duties, Mitch tweeted out, and he also let us know behind the scenes, based on a handful of sources I talked to, it is more likely that the coach openings in the W are going to be filled by W or MBA assistants rather than college head coaches, i.e., Mitch and my tinfoil theory that the New York Liberty head coaching post, is the escape route for Niele Ivey from a lose-lose situation with Hannah Hidalgo in South Bend as the head coach of Notre Dame. That was put to rest by many sources that Mitch spoke to. He did say, based on sources that he spoke with, Lindsey Harding expected to be a strong candidate for the Liberty as she was a finalist for the Mystics gig a year ago. He also noted a couple other names to keep an eye on when it comes to this open position, that it would be, let's keep scrolling. I think he said Katie Smith of Ohio State would also be a potential name to watch out for. So,
Okay.
So keep an eye out because I am fascinated to see what is a proactive hire for the New York Liberty. Some news from the college ranks that came out today. Again, we're recording this podcast on Monday, the 29th. Juju Watkins, as expected, is out for the calendar year after tearing her ACL in the second round of this past March's NCAA tournament. As expected, stinks for the sport, Rebecca. But ultimately, I think it's a good thing for college basketball in the long run because it means we will have the return of Juju to USC in the 26-27 season.
Absolutely. And I think also just, she has to set the proper expectations for that type of injury. It's a long recovery. You don't want to come back too soon or, waffle things in the air through the season that is, going to go by in the blink of an eye, and the best for her in the long run to do that rehab. And, a light will be shown on other players who will be at the forefront of the next WNBA draft. So we got a lot of people to keep eyeballs on.
Speaking of the college ranks, who are teams to watch for, not just this upcoming season, but in 26, 27 and beyond? Because certainly we will have an eye on Lindsey Gottlieb, Juju Watkins, and the crew at the Galen Center for USC. A team that's a little closer to home, both literally for Rebecca Kopelman, live in Cedar Rapids, Iowa right now, but also for yours truly, who previously worked there. The Iowa recruiting trail over the last month plus has been one of the most fun women's basketball recruiting storylines to follow in recent memory. And again, maybe I'm biased, maybe you're biased, but I think this idea of, number one, they brought Addie Deal in, a top 20 recruit by basically every recruiting service. She is on campus, a true freshman this season. Many people believe she is the heir apparent to Caitlin Clark, although those are some pretty lofty expectations. She is expected to be that primary ball handler at some point in her career while also draining the three at a clip not quite at CC's level, but comparable. And I think the bigger win is that she's from the state of California. She's from San Clemente. She is from Southern California, and they convinced her to come to snowy Iowa because if you build it, Rebecca, they will come. And so now we get to this latest twist when it comes to Iowa and what Jan Jensen is cooking out there in Iowa City. So McKenna Walazico, I think that's how you pronounce your last name. Apologies, McKenna, is the number 6 overall recruit in the class of 2026 by basically every major recruiting outlet. She is expected to announce her commitment to Iowa at some point in the next week. They also hosted Addie Bajorn, who is also a top 20 recruit in the class of 2027 or 2026. Yes, 2026. She also was hosted this past weekend. By the way, sidebar, now working in university athletics. Why is the women's recruiting period later than the men's in terms of when you could take official? I digress. Not very happy with how that is, but that's a story for another time. Point is, not only are the Hawks expected to get a top 10 recruit, they may add a top 20 recruit here in the next month plus. Oh, and by the way, Megan Gustafson's cousin is in the top 40 in this year's class. She has Iowa among her top 7 finalists. And so the Hawks are back, baby. And I think that more than just our own fandom, I wanted to bring it up, Rebecca, because this idea of McKenna is from California. Addie Deal is from California. This idea of you are bringing women from all over the country to Iowa City, just like you have UConn and South Carolina over the last 25 plus years, it speaks to, number one, those ladies want to play in sold out arenas. And even after Caitlin Clark's departure last year, they still sold out Carver Hawkeye Arena. And I think that that is just so exciting. And in this new era of, with the House settlement, how will you divide your NIL? I don't know the full breakdown for Beth Getz and the University of Iowa and how they've decided to break down that $20 million. But I would think a large slice of the non-football pie is going to Jan Jensen, and they're reaping the benefits. And so I wonder if we will see any other college program take similar steps, because if everything we're hearing is true, man, it was bigger than Caitlin Clark all along, bigger than Megan too.
I mean, I think that, obviously, like being close to it, it's easy to praise Iowa, but I think at the same time, what you're saying is, you have the UConns and like even USC, it being in California, and these teams that you normally hear about, and I mean, now they're places where people are going, or would you see these moves to like whichever one of all the people went to TCU and things like that. Like people are going to these other schools, and a lot of these women who are already in the W talked about going to some of the smaller schools because they didn't want to be, the big dog. They didn't want to be they didn't want to just be in an easy spot where it's given you're going to, be in the Final Four, you're going to make a run at the championship. They wanted to bring up these programs, but this seems like a point where not only, those things have happened here and there, but this is now putting a program on the map that, wasn't expected to be on the map, or, Iowa in general. We're flyover country, but I think it's really cool to see. And it is really showing the growth of the game from the bottom up and into, just into this new iteration, new generation of players that we're going to continue to see. There's also Chit Chat came in from Georgia Tech.
Yep.
And she seems like a little ball of energy. Yep. And just like super cool to see it just continuing. And I've spoken to a lot of people, long time, Iowa women's basketball ticket holders, and the longstanding PA announcer for Iowa women's basketball, who talk about, the Raptors being down and this, making it feel like it was bigger because they did not sell out. So they did not have the stadium packed. And now it's a hot ticket here in Iowa to go. And I got to witness the USC game before Juju got hurt, got to see her play when they retired Caitlin's jersey, and the noise inside that arena for these women, just incredible.
If you've never seen the video that the University of Iowa put together of Lisa Bluter in Caitlin's senior year walking through the arena, and she, in the same spirit as the Field of Dreams is, if you build it, they will come. And she says, let the rafters be lifted. And just go look it up, folks. It's beautiful. Maybe we're nostalgic. Maybe it's because we're friends with them. I don't know. But just wanted to make sure we gave Iowa love, because shout out to Jan Jensen. Follows a legend. Granted, she was a right-hand woman, but she's killing it on the recruiting trail, aging like fine wine, man. You wouldn't realize how long that Jan's been on the bench, been the number 2 for Lisa. She waited for this opportunity, thriving. Happy for you, Jan. Okay, one more before we get to last call. The Unrivaled rosters have been some of the names have been unveiled, and Rebecca Kopelman has been keeping very, very tedious notes when it comes to what players we will see in Unrivaled. So rattle off for us a couple of those names that we will see in South Florida this winter.
You got a lot of returners, and you got some new ones. Rachel Bannum was just announced like a few hours ago here on this Monday. Also had Ezzy Magnagor, who was announced as well from Seattle, who's coming on in. Aaliyah was announced today as returning, and Ryan Howard, as well as BG going back to Miami. Skylar Diggins, Natisha Heidemann, who was a reserve player, is now on one of the rosters permanently, that we'll find out. Shug Sutton, and we also had Courtney Williams returning, as well as Shakira, and we also had Sonia and Kiki being announced. And they also, I don't know if you saw, announced the all WNBA rookie team too.
Yep. I was going to get to that last call. Yep.
Those two on there, but they'll be in Unrivaled as well. And so a lot of people returning, and there's 2 new teams that have been announced. So we'll see how that happens in terms of drafting and all that jazz, which they did some interesting drafting in the last, their first season. So we'll see what happens.
Let's close out quick hits of beef with this. The best tweet I saw today: Sandy was fired before Chris Koklanis. You knew we had to get that in on this program. Let's get to last call. You mentioned it, Rebecca. Shout out to the all-rookie team for the 2025 season. Number 1 overall pick, Paige Beckers. Number 2 overall pick, Dominique Malanga. Number 3 overall pick, Sonia Citron. And number 4 overall pick, Kiki Iriafan. It's the first time since 2014 the top 4 picks from the same draft class all made the all-rookie team. It's the 7th time in league history. Shout out to Janelle Salion. She impressed. She's the lone undrafted player. She's the fifth player on the all-rookie team.
One of the ones that was plucked into the Valkyries just fit right
somehow,
in.
Some way. Natalie's just like got this secret recruiting service in Europe, and she's just monitoring everybody. And we never knew that any of these players existed, and now there they are, all rookie contributors. Wanted to shout out the Los Angeles Sparks. They have a new facility that is in the works officially. $150 million in El Segundo. They will be neighbors with the Los Angeles Chargers. It represents the largest investment to date for a single team in the history of women's sports for a $150 million practice facility. Shout out Lynn Roberts. Shout out Cam Brink. Shout out the Sparks. Shout out Rebecca's favorite, Nika Mule. We want to make sure we give her flowers too on this fine Monday.
She played for the first time in 355 days, and she's going to come back, and she better be playing.
So wait, so was she like playing? She was playing overseas, or let the people know where we have a Nika sighting.
There was a video and it said Nika was playing for the first time in 355 days, and it must be overseas or at the YMCA. I'm not sure, but she was playing
in Seattle. we find a young Nika Mule trying to get after it. Which, hey, shout out Nika, one of Rebecca's favorites. Obviously, ACL tear. Not what anybody wants to see in a rookie campaign. Yeah, and then re-tear, doesn't play this year. So shout out to Nika. Hope she's part of the new look Storm, who of course are also searching for their next head coach. Dimitri wants to note, shout out Sarah Ashley Barker. Shout out to Alabama's own, also a member of that Los Angeles Sparks, and will hopefully still be around in 2027 for that new practice facility. Let's end with this, Rebecca. You sent it to me twice. I didn't see it till last night. We've already given Sid Colson a couple of shout outs on this show, but we want to shout out her. Is it a podcast? It is a YouTube channel.
It's a podcast.
Okay. Her and Teresa's unsupervised. It's just
iconic.
It's iconic. The award ceremony that you didn't know you needed. It's the first annual Unnecessary Awards. They gave the Mary Kay Award to Izzy Harrison, I guess because she wears a lot of pink. Is that?
I don't know. I think because she's styling.
Okay, she's styling. Well, they named Kalia Copper Best Potential TSA Worker because her pregame fit looks like she's going to work TSA at your local airport. So shout out to Ka. And then finally, and this was our personal favorite, the coach most likely to hit a ref. We had a 3-way tie. Cheryl Reeve, Becky Hammond, Tyler Marsh, who almost quite literally hit a ref. This was also announced prior. These awards were announced prior to Cheryl Reeve, of course, crashing out
Crashing
in game
out.
2 of the WNBA semifinals. Man, we've got one more game to go in the semifinal round of the W. College hoops around the corner. So much going on. We're going to keep you up to date on the very latest here at the Women's Basketball Podcast. Rebecca, anything else before we get on out of here?
I'm going to say go Fever, but just keep it close, baby.
Just keep it close. We hope everybody has fun. For Mitch, still on paternity leave. For Rebecca, I am Mia saying we will catch you next week. Deuces.